Hey, you're back. So, in this section, I promised you what we're going to talk about something called modal and how to create modal window with React. Wait, you're saying I thought we were going to talk about portals? Be patient, my young apprentice. So, modal is a window and it essentially prompts the user to take some action. I can very quickly show you an example of a modal. If I open up the dribble.com and click on this sign up button, I will see a window appear right here on the center of the screen. I can still see some of the content of the page faded out behind it, but I can't directly interact with it until I do something with the modal window. So that's what we're going to do. So actually creating modals with React is a little bit challenging, but you know everything about React now, so I expect you to keep up. So what I'll do is I'll show you first exactly why modals are so challenging with React. So let's go to the diagram. So this is a diagram of our React application. And this is our React component hierarchy. And at the very top of any HTML document, we have this body tag. And inside the body, we usually have a div with an ID of a root. And we are rendering our entire React application into that div with an ID of root. So inside of that div, we've got a provider, and we've got the app, and we've got the different routes inside the app component. And we're going to create a modal component inside this about route, and then maybe some input or button inside of that modal. So just as we see right here in any React application, all of our elements are nested inside of that div with the ID of root, and that is a normal operation of React. And now we're going to use something called React portals to kind of get around this requirement of having to nest all of our different component elements inside of this div with the ID of root. Now, before I tell you how a portal works, you will really need to understand why we want to use a portal in the first place. They are kind of dangerous things, if you know what I mean. So I'll first show you how challenging it is to create a modal if we use traditional React layouts. All right? You with me? Well, let's do it. So I'm going to do it inside the about.js file. So we're going to write up our modal example inside of this file with a normal CSS. First of all, right here, I'm going to open up a div and cut this thing and paste it inside this div. And I'm also going to put my modal inside this div. So I'm going to open up a new line here and then create a div with a class name modal. And as you've guessed, this div would be our modal. And it'll serve as that kind of gray background. Then inside of that, I'm going to open up another div with a class name modal content. And this would be the content, some content anyway, that appears on the very center of the screen, right? So that means inside of it, I'm going to say something like, I am a modal inside the h3 tag to make it a little bit bigger. All right, so let's very quickly add in some CSS just to get these elements into the correct position. And inside the components folder, I'm going to create a new CSS file called modal.css. All right, so inside of here, I'm going to add on some selectors for modal and modal-content. I'm going to start off with modal. I'm going to give this a height of 100% and a width of 100%. And I'll give it a position fixed and background color of gray and top of 0, left 0, and give it a little bit of opacity, 0.9. All right, so now I think that ought to be enough for the background, and we'll add in just a little bit for the modal content as well. So I'm going to put the modal content selector. So I'm going to say background color white, and I'll give it a margin of 300 pixels for the top and the bottom, and then auto, which is going to center this window on the screen horizontally. And we'll give it a height of 40%, width of 40%. And finally, I'll say text align center. Okay, so now I'm going to save this and go back to that about component and import the CSS file. So I will say import and then CSS file, modal.css. Flip back over to the browser. Okay, so now it seems we've got some sort of issue here. I see the modal on the screen and the white modal content in the center of the window. But you notice here, the issue is that we've got this about card still at the center of the modal. So what we would like to see is the about card behind the modal, and it should not be displayed on the modal. And we're going to fix this issue with a feature called z-index. So the z-index is a CSS rule that's going to control what element gets rendered on top of another element. So we'll assign z-index properties integer values from negative values all the way to positive values. So the higher the z-index value, the higher the priority for display on top of the screen. So right now, if we give our modal a z-index of 10, it will be displayed on top of the about card, which by default has a z-index of undefined. So to fix this up, I'm just going to give the modal class z-index, make it 10, like so. So now this has a higher z-index than the about card, and our modal should be displayed on top. So I'm going to save it, and I'll flip back over, and now we can see the about card goes away. And there it is in the background right here. So it's just that our gray background is on top of the about card. So it looks like it's working out for now, but it's not actually so good as it seems. So let's pause it right here. And then in the next section, we're going to discuss why this is not as good as it seems. In other words, why isn't it a perfect solution? You were promising perfect portal solutions. I'll see you in the next video.